It's Masada Men's Trip 2016, Session 3. Really Session 4, but Session 3 of the vows. What a great view. You see where we came. See where we climbed. See the different routes and stuff. And before we go into the relational vows, I want to do a quick overview of the vows for wives in terms of the relationship, just a little bit to mention so you understand these fit together. Remember we talked this morning about how it's a male and female joined together. It says what God has joined together, let no man tear apart. That's a miracle when he does that. Taking two and becoming one, that's a miracle. By the way, the word, when it says what God has joined together, the Greek word that's translated joined, it means glue. I love that. He glued me together with my wife, super glue. Have you ever had super glued together? Try to pull it apart? There's going to be big damage, right? And those of you that have experienced divorce, you know it's very painful. Even if you couldn't avoid it, even if it wasn't your choice or whatever, it's painful, right? It's like ripping your arm off. Because the miracle when God joins together, you can't tear it apart. Only God can. And by His grace, He gives us that, when it's happened to us. Otherwise, we couldn't exist, right? You couldn't make it. And God in His grace and His mercy gives us that freedom and sometimes renews us and gives us, a newness that's incredible. So I already mentioned that the vows for wives in the spiritual vows are pretty similar to ours. I want to point out the little difference where it talks about a woman of prayer partnering with you in agreement. See, when we pray with our wives, it's like we make a motion to God. And our wives say, I second that, God. She becomes our second. The Bible says when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name. What a great 2 or 3, a husband and wife praying together. Or family, husband, wife, and kids. Praying with your family and praying together with that. There's power in that. Because God says, whatever you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth shall have been loosed in heaven. I don't have time to go into the Greek of that, but it's basically in their Jewish understanding, it was basically saying that they had the right to make certain guidelines, and when they did, God stamped that. Now why? Because when He put it into the hearts of 2 or 3 together to agree and declare that, whatever, when you come together like that. See, have you ever been praying in a prayer meeting and you're thinking something that you want to pray and you think it's God speaking to you, but you're just not sure and you're just not sure, and all of a sudden the guy next to you starts praying and prays exactly what you were just wanting to pray for? That's not an accident. And then when he prays you go, yeah, that's it. And I'm in agreement with that. That's what it means when it says, what you bind on earth shall have been bound in heaven. God already did it. He put it into your hearts in agreement to agree upon it so that you could bind it together. So that's what you do with your wife. It becomes this incredible powerhouse of a partnership that's incredible, becoming allies. The biggest thing that these vows did between my wife and I, and it started with the spiritual vows, is that we've been together 46 years, and through almost half of those years, we were adversarial partners. And now we're allies. We spend a lot of time being adversaries. You know how that is, because we're so different, we're so opposite, that we learned early on to be adversarial. Everything she would say, I interpret in a way, and disagree, and she disagree, and everything was a conflict, because everything we took with an adversarial view. Here's what Philippians 2:2 says is the description of a God relationship that comes as a result of these vows. Paul said, make my joy complete by being of the same mind, maintaining the same love, united in spirit, intent on one purpose. That's allies. That's allies. See? You have the same mind. What does that mean? It means you have the same values. So those 15 values, you do it together with your wife and your family. Now you're on the same page, right? Because now it's the conflict. You have healthy conflict that's based on personality differences and things, and that's okay. That helps you grow. The Bible says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another, right? My wife is God's heavenly sandpaper that gets the rough edges off me and helps me to get smooth, right? Sandpaper hurts, it scratches. But when you have the same values, now you have the same mind, now you're allies. Maintaining the same love, right? It's that love, that mutual love in Christ that brings us together. And then united in spirit, God's Spirit joins us together, intent on one purpose. Now the only way that can happen for you is you've got to yield all of your rights to God. Yield your rights to God. Where does that come from? Being a man of faith. It's not about me, it's about God. How do I know that that's true? What does the next verse after that say in Philippians? It says, let each of you esteem others as more important than yourself. Don't look out for your own personal interest, look out for the interest of others. And then he says, you know what? I'm not sure you really get what that means, so let me give you an illustration. What I'm saying to you is have the same mindset that Jesus had. Jesus was in the form of God. He was God. But he didn't think that was something to hold on to. He divested himself of the right to function as God and took on human flesh and was found in the fashion of man and became obedient to death, even death on a cross. That's the guy that said to those multitudes I said last night, if you want to be my disciple, carry your own cross and follow me. Why? Because he did. He did it. See, he modeled that for us. That's the greatest yielding of rights in history. Right? You're God and you yield that? That's pretty powerful yielding of rights. So that's what this is in these spiritual vows. When you are an ally with your wife, there's power that's unimaginable. Now listen quickly to her personal vows. The reason I'm sharing these is because right now when we do our relational vows, you'll see the relationship. But just listen to them quickly. To be a woman of virtue, a woman of purpose, and a woman of beauty. Now listen to this. To be a woman of virtue is to live my life above reproach, almost like the man, right? Leaving Satan no room for blackmail. Living with moral excellence and modesty in body, mind, and spirit. We don't even use the word virtue anymore. That's what it means, right? To be a woman of purpose, to be a husband lover and a children lover. It's from Titus 2. By the way, the scriptures at the bottom that you find there, if you read those, you'll find out that all these vows are just paraphrase of those and some other scriptures. It's right out of the Bible. To be a husband lover and a children lover, managing our household under your authority. I'm not a woman of purpose if it doesn't fulfill your vision. I don't have time to go into it, but I'll send you guys out the link of the video you can watch about authority and submission, why it's important and critical. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. Everything in the universe works in authority and submission, including the Godhood. The Holy Spirit was submitted to the Son and the Father. The Son was submitted to the Father. Right? They were equal in essence, but they function in authority and submission. So she can't know. She was created to be your ally, to be your partner, to fulfill this. And if you not cast that vision, she can't know what it is. She doesn't have any purpose or reason to be. And she'll fill that with all kinds of other things. And she'll be completely insecure. The essence of insecurity in a woman comes primarily from not understanding her purpose in life because you haven't cast the vision for her. You haven't cast the vision for what she's there to help you with. So she has no idea why she's even alive to do that. You'll get that more later. And then finally, a woman of beauty, reflecting outwardly through appearance and conduct, that gentle, quiet reverence of my heart for God. And again, that's in 1 Peter and it's in Titus and all those that where that comes from. That's what real beauty is. Women, have you noticed that women have a real problem with self-image? They've done these studies. Women that are models, like supermodels, think they're ugly. See, why? Because we've not taught what real beauty is. And so that comes from that. So I wanted you to get that part of it, so you'll get that. You can read the relational vows of the wives, but you need to know those, because now we're going to do our relational vows. Okay? The relational vows is to be a man of love, a man of vision, and a man of safety. Now, remember what I said this morning is the purpose of marriage and the purpose of what we're created to be as men? What did I say it was? To reflect the glory and image of God, right? To reflect who God is. This is where you do this. Those first 6 vows, the 3 spiritual and the 3 personal vows, are all about the tools and the preparation to be able to do these next 3. It's all about reflecting who God is. God is a God of love, He's a God of vision, and He's a God of safety. He's our protector. All right? So quickly, let me just share, and you'll get the details later, but let me just share a little bit about that. See, the whole point of love, of reflecting the love of God, that's your primary role in life, is to be a reflection to the world of God's love. And He primarily does that in the way that you love your wife and your children. No wonder the world thinks God is ridiculous, right? No wonder people think God doesn't love them. Look at the picture we've given, right? Now, I said primarily, not only. You get what I'm saying? There's other ways we do that too, and like I said, for the unmarried guys, that doesn't mean you can't reflect God's love. You certainly can. You do it in many ways, and we'll talk about that another time, but it's that being a man of love. Listen to it. To love you in a way that reflects the glory and image of God, as Christ loved the church and as my own body. Now think about that. As Christ loved the church. He died for her. He loved her so much. That was His bride. He wanted to present her, right, holy to God. He wanted to bring His bride home and say, Dad, this is the most amazing bride on the planet. And so He sanctified her and made that way. He didn't blame her. He didn't condemn her. He said, you know what? I'll make it right. I'll die. I'll give everything I have so that I can present her holy and acceptable before God. Wow. See, when you love your wife in that way, that reflects who God is. So, without taking time to go into detail, I'm just going to give you this one little hint. Some of you have heard me do this before. Here's the script for what it sounds like. I want you to memorize, go home and memorize 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter. That's the love chapter. But look at it in a different light that you ever have. And what I want you to do is every time that you have an interaction with your wife or your kids, or your neighbor or your whoever, right? And maybe it's a little bit of conflict, or maybe your wife just doesn't understand you and she doesn't right. You want to be right instead of doing right. I want you to go get by yourself, and I want you to read 1 Corinthians 13 out loud. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love doesn't defend itself. Love doesn't seek its own way. Right? Read that out loud, all those things. And then ask yourself, is that what you sounded like in the interaction you just had with that person, your wife or your kids or your boss or whatever? Is that how you sounded? Is that what it sounded like? Okay, then you're not a man of love. That's what God's love sounds like. And so He's saying, I want you to reflect that. I want you to model that. Now, here's the key. Listen to what it says. May my very acts of love make you a woman of virtue. When you love your wife like that, I was sharing with some of you this morning, the fuel that your wife needs to be a woman of virtue and the other things God's called her to be, the fuel that she needs to do that is love. I want you to imagine that your wife has an engine that runs on gasoline. And you as a man have an engine that runs on diesel. And I was sharing this morning, there are very different ways that those two fuels behave. See, you have spark plugs that spark and ignite that gasoline, right? It ignites it and it makes an explosion. It's a combustion engine, and that drives your car. A diesel engine doesn't have spark plugs. It doesn't explode from a spark. It explodes from compression. It compresses it, and that creates this explosion that does that. You could pour diesel on the ground and light it; it won't catch on fire. Put gasoline on there, let it sit for a second, and just put the match right here. The fumes will ignite, and it'll do it, right? Well, not quite here, but like what'd you say? Hey, Daniel, you gotta give a rest for a bit, okay? Okay. The fumes are there, it ignites it. So think about this. I had a diesel truck. I drove at work, and I was making a trip to Vegas, and I was in a hurry, wasn't thinking. I usually drive my car, and so I get in my truck, I stop for gas, and put gas in my diesel. I got about 2 miles down the road. I pull over. I towed it over to Saddleback Church. Took about 2 hours. Completely drained it out. Cleaned all the filters. Filled it up with diesel, and it ran fine. Right? It's not good for it. It won't do it. It won't run long, but it'll run some, and then it doesn't do much damage. You can fix it. It can, but it usually doesn't. If you put diesel in a gasoline engine, you're talking a couple $1,000s worth of work, if it will even start. Depends on how much gas you had in there when you put the diesel in. It might start if it's a little bit of a mixture, but eventually it'll stop, and you're going to do some damage. It takes a lot of money and time to fix it. So think about this. You might think that you're loving your wife, and you're really respecting her the way you think love looks, and you're going to do a lot of damage, and it takes years to fix. Your wife thinks she's respecting you when she's really just loving you. That's not good. You know that. We need that respect, right? That's the fuel we need. It won't do that. We'll recover. We'll get over it, right? But when you do that to your wife, it causes a lot of damage, years of damage that it takes to overcome, right? So be patient and graceful with your wife if you've done that with her. All right, so the fuel, so that's what this means. May my very acts of love, that's the fuel she needs to do that, right? We don't do that naturally. We don't do it naturally, right? God's designed it that my primary source of fuel is my wife. And her primary, now I said primary, what I discovered, because I thought I couldn't really be right, it was my wife's fault because she just didn't respect me. That's why our marriage was in trouble. She just didn't respect me, right? And I discovered that God has an endless fuel tank to fill me up. So it was a cop-out. I could get fueled, but his design is to get that from my wife. So we had to learn together to fuel each other up. Okay, so quickly, to be a man of vision. This can be confusing. And again, you'll get the details later, but to be a man of vision is to be a leader you can follow. Clear, but unexplainable. Firm, but flexible. Confident, but humble. That's tricky, huh? But if you really examine those, what they mean. Clear, but unexplainable means that you know what God's called you to do. You know what your life is about. And you know the direction God's leading you. And you explain that to her, you tell that to her, but she's, I don't get it. That doesn't make any sense. Her brain works very different than you. She processes completely different than you do. Runs on different fuel. And she doesn't get it. And you have to be able to say, no, this is clear. This is where God said, I can't explain it to you. I can't tell you why that is. But I need you to trust that God's working through me to help us to get to this place. It's clear but unexplainable. Firm but flexible means, yeah, I know that that's the direction we're going. But you know what? It doesn't mean I have to get there right now. If my wife's not ready for that, I don't just grab her by the hair like a caveman and drag her along. I look at her, and in love, I lead her to where she can get to the place where she can get that confidence and that trust. It has to be a track record where she learns to trust me, a leader you can follow. By the way, you know what? In order to fully reflect God, you know what the most important quality of submission is in order to be accurately reflecting God? It has to be voluntary. Jesus willingly submitted to his Father and gave his life. Herod, you remember Herod said, "Don't you know I got the power to take your life?" And Jesus said, "Nobody takes my life from me. I freely give it." Right? That's what we're modeling. See? It's I'm going to say something I don't want you to take crude, right? It's to make a point. You know what the difference between seduction and rape? What is the difference between seduction and rape? It's salesmanship. Think about that. You know what I'm saying? In other words, if it becomes willing, it's not rape, right? It's you have done it. See, when you just take it, you demand it. You just say, "It doesn't matter. You got to follow me, right? You got to submit to me." That is not how you cast a vision, how you be a leader. But when you lead properly and you learn how to be firm but flexible. See, in other words, you know what God's calling is, but that doesn't mean you drag your wife along. It means that you are a leader she can trust. And then finally, confident but humble. It's saying, "No, I know this is true, but I don't deserve for you to follow me. I know I haven't been that way. I know I'm asking you to give me grace and mercy in doing this as we follow Christ together. Thank you for having that grace and mercy that comes from, God, that he gives you the ability to do that with me." That's what it means to be a man of vision. And again, you'll get the better. And finally, to be a man of safety. To use my authority. See, authority isn't about being the big cheese, isn't about being the ruler. The biblical understanding of authority is protection. It's about protecting. God has complete authority over us. What does he do with it? He protects us. Jesus died for us to save us. That's what he did with his authority. In 17th chapter of John, Jesus prayed this amazing prayer. And he started out, he said, "All authority has been given to me." Right? He declared his authority over everything. And then the entire rest of the prayer was all about protecting those that he had authority over. Right? He said, "God, I'm not asking you to take them out of the world. Just protect them from the evil one." That's what he did with his authority. That's what he modeled for us. So, to be a man of safety is to use my authority to fight diligently to free you from all physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental bondage. To be your knight in shining armor. Guys, I'm going to tell you this. All of us have people that we're in authority over. Not just our wives, and we're all under authority, right? I'm under this man's authority. That's my pastor, right? I freely submit myself to his authority, right? And there are others that I have authority over, right? God set it up that way. It's all over the universe, that authority and submission. And to use that authority for protection and for safety, see, I'm telling you something, your wives are being held hostage by a vicious, evil enemy who is torturing her every day. Not only is he torturing her, he's convincing her that it's your fault. He's not only torturing your wife and having her in bondage, he's convinced her that you're the reason, that you're the culprit, that it's all because of you. And that's why she's being tortured like that. Whenever I say this in a mixed group with husband and wife, the men are going, huh? And the women are crying right now. And they attest that. They tell me all the time, yeah, you're exactly right. They are in bondage about their looks, about their care, about everything. They just feel, if I say to the average guy, if I criticize you and say, you know what, when we were hanging out on the trip, you were this and this and this and it was bad, you're going to have one of several reactions as a man. You're going to say, oh, thanks for sharing that with me, I'll work on that. Or you're going to say, yeah, forget you, you don't know what you're talking about. Right? And walk away. Never think another thing about it. Or any reaction like that. If I did the same thing to the average woman, you know what she'd do? She'd walk away thinking, oh my gosh, I'm the worst person on the planet. Does everybody else see me that way too? I bet, oh my gosh, now I'm thinking back. Oh no, everybody thinks I'm the worst. Talk to your wife, see if they don't think like that. Right? They're in bondage all the time. Why? Because God designed their role to be vulnerable. God designed their role to be sensitive. Things bother them that don't bother you. It affects them in a very different way. Right? So they're being held captive. So let me tell you how this looks. Illustrate this for you. And then we're going to shout these vows together. Okay? Imagine something. Imagine if you were traveling in some foreign country, maybe a Middle Eastern country or whatever, and you got taken hostage. Now, do you guys know what an EGR friend is? Extra grace required. We all have those friends that, they're friends, you love them and all that, but it's just like my brother-in-law was like that. I knew whenever my brother-in-law was going to call me, it was going to cost me. I loved him. He was a good guy, but it's just the way he was. I knew it's gonna be a bummer. It'd be like, hey, he coming up. Hey, why don't we double date? Get your wife and come on over and we'll go out. And I'll tell you what we'll do. He says, I'll go buy dinner, and you pay for the movie, and we'll go to the dollar theater, right? I'll buy everybody dinner, and you do that. And I'd fall for it every time. Something would happen. We would end up late or something, and the only thing we could do is quickly go through and get a $1 hot dog, and then the movie we wanted to see turns out not playing at the dollar theater, and we had to go to the expensive theater, and ended up, and I'm paying like $50 and he's paying like $8, right? I don't know how, but it always happened. That's that EGR. It could be different for you, but that's it. So imagine that, friend. So you get taken hostage by this place, and because of political reasons and stuff, the government can't help you, right? They know where you're at, but they can't do anything about it. That's happened a lot lately, right? We've had guys being held hostage like that for years. Remember in Iran, all those people? So, now think about that EGR, that friend of yours, that's one that always is a problem. He hears about your situation. And he goes and he does a fundraiser and he raises a bunch of money and he finds out through the black market, he gets some information and finds out where you're being held. And then he goes and he sells his house and everything that he has. And he hires some mercenaries to train him. And then he comes. So you're sitting in this little hut where you've been beat up and tortured. And all of a sudden you hear this commotion. You hear something going on in the camp and you hear gunfire and stuff. And all of a sudden the door kicks up and there's your EGR buddy. And he leans down and he picks you up, he throws you over his shoulder and he's running and you hear gunfire and all this kind of stuff. And you get to this clearing and there's a helicopter there and he throws you in the helicopter and then he climbs in as it's taking off and he barely gets in. And then as soon as he sees you're okay and you're off the ground, he collapses and you look down and he's been shot up all over the place. And he survives, but he's in the hospital for months recovering from his wounds. Let me ask you a question. All that crap he ever put you through, all that stuff he ever did, does it matter to you now? Will it ever matter again? Will you ever care? No, right? He's your rescuer, you're a hero, you're knight in shining armor. See what I'm saying? When you learn to be your wife's rescuer and you free her from that bondage instead of trying to be right all the time, but you fight a spiritual battle that she's being held hostage by this vicious, cruel enemy. And it's not a fleshly battle. That's what prayer, you can go and fight this with the armor of God. Fight that enemy, right? Now, when I teach this to wives, I do it a little bit different, that illustration. So I tell her she's the one in the hut. And I say, because if you look at her relational vow and being a woman of encouragement, could you imagine? And you've all experienced this, right? So I say, you're in that hut, and then you hear all this commotion, and you look through a knothole, and you see your husband out there come and rescue you. He's hiding behind the trees. So he comes out behind the tree, and he's running across there, and his gunfire strikes up and everything, and he stops, and he turns around and runs back behind the tree. And of course, you yell out and you say, I knew it. You wuss. I knew you couldn't do it. I knew you, gee whiz, you don't love me. What'd you even come for? See the slightest little problem, and you just like, can you imagine that? What's that guy gonna do? Never mind, right? So I tell her that part from her perspective. I said, no, you need to be going, honey, you can make it. Thank you, I love you, don't worry about it. I know it's hard, but don't give up on me. Please don't give up on me, right? That's what I teach her in being a woman of encouragement. But for you being this man of safety and rescuing her, she's not the enemy. Your wife is not the enemy. She's your ally. And she's being tortured. Rescue her. Fight for her. And the whole time she's, you know what Murphy's Law is? You know what Murphy's Law is? Murphy's Law is what can go wrong, will go wrong, and at the worst possible time. Let me tell you Murphy's Law of loving your wife. Jesus modeled this stuff, this servant leadership. You remember he did this when his disciples, he washed their feet. Now that was the lowest servant in the household got the job of washing the feet. You know, they wore sandals. Imagine, look at my shoes like that. That's what their feet were like. So he washed their feet, right, to model that servanthood, right? Here's Murphy's Law of loving your wife, Murphy's Law of ministry. Imagine, when you're washing their left foot, they're kicking you in the teeth with their right foot. It's not maybe. Trust me, going to happen. When you're loving your wife that way and you're rescuing her, she's going to be kicking you in the teeth with her right foot. Jesus, just wipe the blood and now go to the right foot while she's kicking you in the teeth with her left foot. Why? Because hurting people hurt people. You know, if you find a dog that's been hit by a car, have you ever done that? You try to help it, he'll bite you. Why? Because he doesn't know you're trying to rescue him, trying to help him. And your wife is in so much pain, she doesn't get it. Now, it could be your kids, could be your neighbor, could be whatever. This applies to all this as men of love and men of safety, right? That's what this is. So I'm saying, I'm encouraging you to become men of safety, that you can rescue your wives. And again, this is again not about guilt. It's about conviction to say, look, as she's kicking you, don't give up on her. Love her. Jesus didn't give up on you. He went all the way to the cross, that torture, to rescue you. Model that for your wife while she's kicking you in the teeth. Can I get a testimony? Right? You know that's true. Because but see, we blame them like they just don't respect you. No, they're hurting. They don't know they're doing that to you. If I said that to them, they wouldn't deny it. They would say, no. He just doesn't, he thinks he's doing, right? They attack us. We want to love them and rescue them. So that is what it means to be a man of safety. And again, just an overview. All right, so here we got it. You cannot be a man of safety if you're not a man of vision. Why? Because it's in the context of what God's called you to do that these bondages come up. That's why Satan... why do you think that Satan went after Eve instead of Adam? Why? Because he knew he could get to Adam through Eve. Right? Yes. Adam wasn't deceived, she was, but that wasn't because she was stupid. It's because he didn't protect her. He was standing a few feet away, watched the whole thing go down. It's like, have you ever seen two brothers, Johnny and Billy? Billy's the older one, and Mom says, don't touch the cookies, and Billy says to Johnny, go get a cookie. It's okay. I'll watch. It'll be okay. Don't worry about it. Right? And so Johnny goes and get the cookies, and then they get caught. Johnny took them. right? You ever see that? Johnny did it. That's what Adam did. It's the woman you gave me. Nowhere in the Bible does it say because of one woman sin came into the world. It said because of one man. But see, Satan can, and he's still going to do that. It's in the context of being a man of vision that he attacks your wife to derail that whole thing. She's not the enemy. She's not disrespectful. Satan's attacking her. Protect her. Love her. And you can't be a man of vision if you're not a man of love, because that's what the vision's all about, is to be an ally with your wife, to love and model for the world. This is what real love looks like. You can't be a man of love, a man of vision, a man of safety, if you aren't a man of integrity, honor, and dignity. And you can't be a man of integrity, honor, and dignity if you're not a man of faith, a man of prayer, a man of action. Okay? This is as quickly as I could even give you an overview of this, right? But this stuff is deep. There's a lot to it. So I'm praying with all my heart that you will seek this out, that this weekend will be a time where you'll say, look, I don't get it all, but I get enough to know that's the man I want to become. I'm not there. That's the man I want to become. And pray for your wife that she'll unwrap it a little bit at a time, that grace and mercy. Because you know what's going to happen? You're going to go home and tell your wife about this vow you made, and she's going to say, yeah, I've heard it before, right? Or she's going to say, yeah, while you were doing that, having fun with the guys, I was here, right? Who knows? Every wife's different, but it'll be something like that, right? She's going to say, oh, I'm so happy that you had such a great time. And now they might, don't get me wrong, and sometimes they'll do that. But it's just as likely you're going to hear something like that, and you're going to be discouraged. You're going to say, okay, what's the point? Forget it, right? But I hope you got enough that you'll want to seek it out. Get the book that'll tell in detail the living that matters and the websites, and pray for me that I'll get the websites done and we'll get that. I'm passionate. This is what's going to change the future of our country. We need men to stand up and be leaders and love like this, to model for the world. They're sick of seeing religious people bragging about everything they do for God. They need to see people that are screwed up like they are and hear everything that God does for us. Right?
Yes.
That's what we need. We got to stand up, and it's through generation after generation. That's how this is going to get back. That's how we lost it. Thinking generationally. And again, if you don't have kids, there's plenty of people you can influence. I need some of you that are unmarried to come alongside of me and help me do this. I do. I can't do this by myself. I can't. And I need you. Let's join together. Let's partner in this, okay? Catch this vision. So here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to pray for us that God would just somehow open our hearts. I'm flawed. I know I didn't express this all in the right way. I'm going to go home like you all do, and I'm going to think, I wish I forgot I should have told this, or I should have done that, right? You know what it's like. But you know what? I prayed. I asked God to do this. If God's Spirit doesn't touch you, and I hope you got the point, I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty or feel bad in any way. I'm flawed. I screw up at this all the time. But that's why we need each other. I want to point. So I'm going to ask God to open your heart and your mind to catch this, so that when I finish that prayer, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to stand together, and I'm going to say, God, I'm making a vow before you today that I'm going to be, and you're going to say, a man of faith. That's why if you got the paper, if you want to look at it, a man of faith. And I'm going to be a man of prayer. And so I'm going to say, and I'm going to be, and you're going to respond, a man of action. And I'm going to say, and I'm going to be, right? So I'll say that I'm going to be, and you shout at the top of your lungs that next vow. And we're going to do all 9 vows. And I want them to hear us. I want to hear us back in Rancho Santa Margarita, right? It's I want. We're going to go on the warpath. We're going to attack Satan. This is an offensive battle. We're going to reclaim in the name of God this. All right. So let me pray, and then we're going to shout it. It'll bounce off that canyon wall. I want at least Matthew to hear it back at camp. He couldn't make it because of his ankle, so we're going to do that. All right? So I'm going to pray, and then I'll just start out. God, I'm going to be a man of faith together, right? So we'll do that cadence. Man of faith, man of prayer, man of action in response to those things. Okay, so let me pray and then we'll do that. Lord, I trust you 100%. There's no doubt in my mind that you gave me the vision, the calling. Really, you commanded me to get some guys and come up here. You told me, and I didn't listen for a lot of years. I listened, but I disobeyed. I didn't follow through. God, you knew exactly what men would be here today, in this moment. So I know that we all were here to hear this. And though I'm flawed in my presentation, your spirit is not flawed. You know exactly what each man needed to hear. And I'm asking that you somehow cause that to come alive in them. Give them that conviction, not the guilt, but the conviction of committing to be the man of these vows. Not that they're saying that they live up to it, but that they're gonna have a passion to become this man. That's the vow we're making, to become the man on these vows. And then to lead our wives and our families and our friends, for those that are unmarried, to become this man, so that God, if you bring a wife into their life, they'll be ready with this to share and to have that kind of relationship. So God, as we shout these vows to you, we can't even do that right unless your spirit helps us. So help us to shout this in a way to you that comes from the honesty of our heart, knowing that we're flawed, knowing that we won't do it perfectly, but that you'll give us the grace. So God, if you'll help us, and if you'll give us your grace and your mercy, then we can make this vow to you that we'll do it. We can't do it without you. I don't want to make this as a pretense, God, but from my heart, knowing that I'm flawed, it's that planned failure, that practice. We're going to practice being this. So God, I just thank you and I praise you for this. In the name of the Lord Jesus, amen. Amen. All right, so if you're willing to join me, and if you're not, listen, don't you judge anybody that's not doing it. Don't you do it, right? Because there could be all kind of reasons why somebody may just feel like, no, I can't do that right now. I'll think about it, pray about it, or whatever. But I hope all of you can, but don't you judge anybody that's not. All right, so here's how it's going to go. God, I'm pledging to you from my heart today, in 2016, that in 2017, I want to be a man of faith. And I want to be a man of prayer. And I want to be a man of action. And I want to be a man of integrity. And I want to be a man of honor. And I want to be a man of dignity. And I want to be a man of love. And I want to be a man of vision. And I want to be a man of safety. Yes! In the name of the Lord Jesus, make it so. Amen. All right. Wow. Thank you guys. Now, we're going to go back to camp and take your time, but we're going to, in that camp number 1, we're going to reconstruct, we're going to build an altar to God with rocks. Pilate used to do this in the Bible, just as a sign, just to say, hey, this was the place we did this. So we're going to build an altar of rocks. Last year we had it, well, you saw that picture. If you've seen the pictures online, I'll show it to you, how we did that, and I stood up on top of it, and that's gone. Let's rebuild it, okay? So let's head that way.